The citadel of unified commerce was a monument to noise and light. Ships from 100 worlds drifted outside its vast viewports. Inside, the air hummed with the low chatter of a dozen different languages. Jay Lee moved through the crowded corridor of Nova Galactica Corporation. He felt small. He was one of many humans here, and one of even more employees. His job was in data logistics. It meant he made sure digital shipments arrived on time. It was important work, but it was quiet work. He spent most days at his terminal watching lines of code. His boss, Mira, was a department head. She was sharp and always busy. Jay only saw her in meetings. She would give clear instructions, then leave. She was not unkind, just distant. Jay understood. The corporation was huge. Everyone was trying to move up. Today, however, was different. There was a big meeting coming up. A very important client was visiting. The client was from the SS Van Collective. They were a reptilian species called the SS Van. They controlled a lot of trade routes. Getting their contract would be a huge win for the company. Jay was not in the main meeting, but his team had prepared all the data files, so he was asked to wait outside the meeting room. He was to provide any digital files if they were needed. He stood by the wall, holding a data tablet. He could hear voices through the door. One voice was Director Park. He was a senior executive. He was a serious man in his 50s. His voice was calm but firm. Another voice was Myra's. She sounded professional and confident. Then there was a third voice. It was low and had a slight hiss to it. That was Kthar, the SS Van client. Jay could not hear every word, but he heard pieces. Kthar was talking about long-term agreements. He spoke about stability. He said something about the value of a settled unit. Jay did not fully understand. Then Director Park spoke. His words were clear through the door. And Mira, your own situation? For such a lengthy contract, our client values a stable foundation. A balanced personal life reflects a balanced professional one. There was a short pause. Jay imagined Myra's face. She would be keeping it perfectly still. My personal life is quite stable, Director Park. Myra's voice came, smooth as glass. Good, good, said Director Park. Family is important. It shows commitment. Ktharas people, they prefer to deal with established pairs. It suggests reliability. The meeting continued. Jay felt a strange discomfort. Felt wrong to listen. He looked at the floor until the door opened. Director Park walked out first with Kthar. The alien was tall, with smooth gray-green skin and wise, slow-blinking eyes. Mira followed. Her expression was unreadable. She glanced at Jay and gave a small, quick nod. It was a signal. It meant he should follow her to her office. He did. Her office was neat and quiet. The door shut, sealing out the corridor noise. Mira did not sit at her desk. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. You heard, she said. It was not a question. Some of it, Jay admitted. It was hard not to. She turned to face him. For the first time, Jay saw something other than cool control on her face. He saw tiredness. He saw stress. The contract is for 15 years, she said. It's not just a deal. It's a partnership. Ktharas culture. They believe a person who cannot build a strong bond at home cannot be trusted with a strong bond in business. It is irrational. It is unfair. But it is the reality. Jay nodded, unsure of what to say. Director Park as good as told me that my promotion and the success of this deal hinge on me presenting an image. The image of a stable, married woman. Jay began to see where this was going. His stomach felt tight. I need a solution, Jay. And you are that solution. She took a deep breath. I need you to pretend to be my husband. For 1 year. The length of the contract's probationary period. Jay's mouth went dry. He could not speak. It would be a legal agreement, she continued quickly. A contract. You would move into a corporate residence with me. We would present ourselves as a couple at all work functions. In front of my family. In front of Kthar. In return, you will receive an immediate promotion to senior analyst. Your salary will triple. At the end of the year, A bonus of 2 years' salary will be paid to you. All living expenses will be covered. The numbers swirled in Jay's head. It was a life-changing amount of money. He thought of the messages from his mother on Earth. The medical bills. The debt on the family home. The money could erase all of that. "Why me?" he finally asked, his voice quiet. "Because you are reliable," she said. "You are observant. You don't gossip. And you are not emotionally complicated. This is a business arrangement. I need someone who can see it that way." The words were practical, not cruel. She was stating facts. Jay looked at her. He saw his boss. He saw a woman trapped by the stupid rules of an alien client and a traditional director. He also saw his family's worried faces. He thought of the noise, the endless rush of the Citadel. He thought of the quiet, simple life his parents wanted back home. This money could give them that quiet. "Okay," he said. The word came out before he could think about it more. "I'll do it." A wave of relief passed over Myra's face. The professional mask returned quickly. "Good. We begin immediately. Pack your things. You'll move into the new unit tonight. We have much to discuss." Jay left her office. The corridor seemed louder and brighter than before. He felt like he had stepped off a ledge and was still falling. He was no longer just Jay Lee, data analyst. He was now Jay Lee, fake husband. The reality of it was a heavy, strange weight in his chest. The years stretched out before him, long and full of secrets. The corporate residence was in a quiet, secure tower. It was not a home. It was a very nice hotel suite meant for living. Everything was smooth and clean. The furniture was modern. The windows showed a perfect view of the Citadel's lights. Jay stood in the middle of the living room with his single suitcase. Felt strange. Mira was already there. She had a few boxes of her own things. They looked at each other. The reality of their agreement was suddenly very big in the quiet room. "Here are the rules," Mira said. Her voice was all business again. She handed him a thin data tablet. "This is our background story. We need to memorize it. We met at the corporate retreat on Lyra Station 2 years ago. We liked each other because we were both quiet and focused. We got married 6 months ago in a small ceremony on Earth. In Seoul. My sister Sumi was there. Your brother was your witness." Jay scanned the document. It was simple and boring. It was perfect because it was hard to argue with. "What about our families now? Do they call us?" "My parents live far away. They visit the Citadel sometimes. We will deal with that later. Your family is on Earth. The time difference and cost of communication explain why calls are rare." She had an answer for everything. "We need to learn details. What is your favorite color?" "Blue," Jay said. "Mine is green. But I will say blue is growing on me because of you." "What do you drink in the morning?" "Black coffee. Sometimes tea. I drink tea with honey. You know that. You buy a specific kind of honey for me from the market on level 4. She was building a shared life out of thin air. "We need physical familiarity. We cannot flinch when we touch. It will look wrong." Jay nodded. This felt like the strangest job training. "Start simple," she said. She held out her hand. "Here, take my hand. Just for a minute." He did. Her hand was cool and her grip was firm. They stood there in the fancy living room holding hands like children. It was awkward. Jay looked at the wall. Mira looked at their joined hands. "We should practice a casual touch," she said after a moment, letting go. "Like if we are walking. Or if you are passing me something." She stepped closer. "Put your hand on my upper back. Gently. Like you are guiding me." Jay lifted his hand and placed it between her shoulder blades. He could feel the fabric of her shirt and the shape of her spine underneath. She didn't move away. "Good," she said. Her voice was softer. "Now adjust my collar. It's a thing a spouse might do without thinking." He turned her slightly. His fingers brushed the skin of her neck as he pretended to fix the collar of her shirt. She held very still. He could smell her perfume. It was something light and clean. He pulled his hand back quickly. "This is strange," he said. "It is necessary," she replied. But she took a small step back too. We will do this every evening. For 15 minutes. We will build the habits. The next few days were a routine. They went to work separately. They came back to the residence together. They practiced. They ate dinner and talked about their fake past. They learned real things about each other by accident. Jay learned Mira could not cook. She lived on ordered meals. One night, the food delivery was late. Jay felt hungry and stressed. He went to the kitchen. He found some basic ingredients. He started making a simple Korean stew, kimchi jjigae. The smell of garlic and pepper filled the space. Mira came out of her room. "What is that?" "Food," Jay said. "I'm cooking." She watched him, curious. "You know how to do that?" "It's not hard. My mother taught me." He stirred the pot. "It helps me think." When it was done, he served 2 bowls. They ate at the counter. Mira took a careful bite. Then another. She ate the whole bowl. "This is better than the ordered food," she said, surprised. Another evening, Jay heard soft music from Myra's room. It was old music. It was a soundtrack from a 21st century Korean drama. He recognized it because his mother watched them. He was walking by her open door to get water. She was sitting at her desk, working with the music playing. She saw him pause. She looked embarrassed for a second. Then she shrugged. "It helps me focus. The stories are simple. The people are predictable." "I understand," Jay said. "My mom loves them." They looked at each other. For a moment, they weren't boss and employee or fake husband and wife. They were just 2 people from the same place, far from home, finding little pieces of it in a stew pot and in old music. The practice continued. The touches became less stiff. Jay could put his hand on the back of her chair naturally. Mira could reach out and fix his tie without overthinking it. They developed a silent language of looks. A raised eyebrow from her meant, "Follow my lead." A slight nod from him meant, "I understand." 1 week after they moved in, Mira came home with 2 small boxes. She handed one to Jay. Inside was a plain silver band. A wedding ring. "Kthar and Director Park are having a casual dinner with senior staff tomorrow. We are invited." "As a couple," she said. She put her own ring on. It looked normal on her finger. It looked like it belonged. Jay put his ring on. Felt cold and heavy. It was the heaviest thing he had ever worn. He looked at it on his hand. It was the mark of their deal. It was a symbol that was a complete lie. "We are ready for the first test," Mira said, looking at her own hand. She didn't sound entirely sure, but she sounded determined. Jay closed his hand into a fist, feeling the metal press into his skin. The quiet practice was over. Tomorrow they would perform in front of an audience. The year-long act was truly beginning. The dinner was at a restaurant on the Citadel's upper level. It had a view of the nebula. The tables were private. The lights were low. It was meant to feel special. To Jay, it felt like the final exam after a week of study. He and Mira arrived together. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. It was a practiced move. She wore a dark blue dress. He wore a simple, neat suit. Their wedding rings caught the soft light. Director Park and Kthar were already seated. Kthar's large, slow eyes moved over them as they approached. "Ah, the happy couple," Director Park said, smiling. "Mira, Jay, you both look well." "Thank you, Director," Mira said, her voice warm. It was a new tone for her. She pulled out Jay's chair for him. It was a small, wifely gesture they had rehearsed. Jay smiled at her as he sat. It felt stiff on his face. The dinner began. Talk was about business at first. Safe topics, market trends, shipping lanes. Jay mostly listened. He nodded at the right times. He passed Mira the salt when she glanced at it. It was a quiet, natural-looking thing. Kthar watched them more than he spoke. His head would tilt slightly. His forked tongue would flick out, tasting the air. It was unnerving. Then Director Park turned the talk. "So, Jay, Mira tells me you work in data logistics, a vital field. It must be interesting work." "It is," Jay said. He kept his answers short. "It's about seeing patterns, making sure things flow." "And do you two find it difficult?" Kthar spoke suddenly. His voice was a soft hiss. To balance the demands of your bonding with such work? Mira answered smoothly. We support each other. Jay is very understanding when I have late nights, and I try to leave work at the office. She reached over and placed her hand on top of Jay's where it rested on the table. Her skin was cool. It helps to have a partner who knows the same world. Jay turned his hand under hers so they were palm to palm. He laced his fingers with hers. It was a bold move. They hadn't practiced this exact thing, but it felt like the right answer. Her fingers tightened slightly in surprise, then relaxed. Understanding is the root of a strong branch, Kthar said, a saying of his people. He seemed pleased. The dinner continued. Jay felt the pressure like a weight on his shoulders. Every move, every word was part of the show. He noticed Myra's tells. She would touch her earring when she was thinking of a careful answer. He saw her shiver once. The restaurant's climate control was cold. Near the end of the meal, while Director Park was telling a long story, Jay leaned close to Mira. His mouth was near her ear. He could smell her perfume again. You're cold? He whispered, so quietly only she could hear. She gave a tiny, almost invisible nod. Without a word, Jay let go of her hand. He stood up smoothly. He took his suit jacket off. He placed it gently around her shoulders. He let his hands rest there for a second, a gentle squeeze, before sitting back down. Mira pulled the jacket closer. She looked at him. Her eyes held a real thank you, not a practiced one. Thank you, honey, she said, her voice soft. Director Park beamed. See? Consideration. It's the small things. Kthar made a low, rumbling sound of agreement. The small things are never small. They are the echoes of the larger harmony. This is promising. The dinner ended with handshakes. Director Park was happy. Kthar was thoughtful. In the elevator ride down, Mira and Jay were silent. The performance was over. The energy left them both. Back in the residence, the door shut. Mira took off his jacket and handed it back. That was good, she said. She sounded tired. The jacket thing, that was smart. I didn't plan for that. You were shivering, Jay said simply. He hung up his jacket. We survived the first one, she said. She slipped off her shoes. And it worked. Director Park sent me a message. He said Kthar was impressed by our visible unity. Good, Jay said. The word felt flat. He was relieved, but also empty. It was like finishing a difficult task and having nothing to show for it but exhaustion. They stood in the quiet living room. The rings were still on their fingers. The silence between them was different now. It wasn't the awkward silence of strangers. It was the quiet of two people who had just been through something together. I'm going to make tea, Mira said, walking to the kitchen. Do you want some? Yes, please, Jay said. He watched her. She moved differently here. She was less like the boss and more like the person who listened to old drama music. She boiled the water. She found the honey. She put a spoonful in his cup, remembering what he told her he liked. She brought the cups over. They sat on the large sofa, not close, but not at opposite ends either. They drank their tea in the quiet. It was a real moment in the middle of their fake life. No one was watching. No lines needed to be said. They were just two people very tired, sharing tea after a long day. The nebula glowed outside the window, beautiful and distant. For now, the act was on pause. And in the pause, something very small and very real quietly took root. Days turned into weeks. The routine settled around them like a familiar suit of clothes. They went to work. They came home. They practiced their story and their touches until they felt less like acting and more like habit. The deal with Kthar moved forward, step by careful step. The benefits of the arrangement started to appear. At work, Jay found his new title, senior analyst, came with a better office. It was small, but it had a window. His old co-workers treated him with a new respect. He was now Myra's husband. Projects that needed approval moved faster. Director Park would nod at him in the hallway, a smile on his face. How's the family, man? He'd ask. Jay would give a polite answer. One afternoon, Mira came to his office door. Kthar wants a tour of the new data hub tomorrow. He asked for us both to join him, as a pair. He says he values our combined perspective. Jay looked at the work on his screen. He had planned to finish a complex report. What time? It will take most of the afternoon. She saw him glance at his screen. Your current project can wait. This is the priority. He nodded. The report would have to be done late at night. But she was right. This was the job now. Being her husband was the job. The tour was a success. Kthar asked them questions. Sometimes he asked Mira about technical details. Sometimes he asked Jay about workflow and stress on the systems. They answered well. They didn't step on each other's words. Jay found he could guess what Mira would say next. He knew when to stay quiet and when to add a point. It felt like a dance they had learned without music. Afterwards, Director Park pulled them aside. Excellent work. The client is very happy. He sees a true partnership here. This is exactly what we needed. His praise was like a warm blanket. For a moment, Jay felt proud. Then he remembered why they were there, and the feeling cooled. The personal costs began the same week. Jay's mother on Earth sent a video message. She was feeling better, she said. Her voice was bright. She wanted to have a long, proper call to catch up. She missed seeing his face. The message came on a Thursday evening. On Friday morning. Mira reminded him. The gallery opening is tonight. For the clients from the Rigel system, spouses are required. It's a networking event. We need to be seen. What time? Jay asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. 7. We should be there by 6:30 to mingle. That was the exact time his mother was free to talk. The time difference was difficult. This was their only chance for the week. I have a family call then, he said, his voice quiet. Mira paused. She was holding her data tablet, reviewing the day's schedule. She didn't look up. Can you reschedule it? It's hard to find a good time. The time difference is 12 hours. I understand, she said, and she sounded like she meant it, but her next words were firm. But this opening is important. The Rigel clients are friends of Director Park. It's about showing a united front, a stable life. Jay thought of his mother's hopeful voice. He thought of the money he was earning for her, the money that was already paying her doctors. The choice was no choice at all. I'll send her a message, he said. The words felt heavy. Thank you, Mira said softly. She finally looked at him. There was an apology in her eyes, but it didn't change the facts. That night, he put on a smile at the gallery. He stood beside Mira. He shook hands with important people whose names he forgot. He laughed at jokes that weren't funny. All the while, he imagined his mother's face when she saw his short, apologizing text message. A week later, it was Myra's turn. They were at the residence. She was dressed for a friend's wedding back on Earth. She was attending through a holographic link. She had the headset ready. Her dress was simple and pretty. Jay had never seen her look so nervous about something not related to work. Then her tablet chimed. It was a directive from corporate. A last-minute spouse-included retreat. A team-building trip for upper management on a nearby forested orbital platform. Departure was in 2 hours. Attendance was mandatory. She read the message. Her shoulders sank. She looked from the tablet to the headset on the table. You have to go, Jay said. He knew it was true. It's Hannah's wedding. I promised her. We've been friends since we were children. Her voice was tight. She wasn't arguing with him. She was arguing with the situation. They'll understand it's work, Jay said, but it sounded weak. Will they? Mira asked, looking at the black headset. This whole year, I'm missing my life. For this performance. She didn't cry. Mira never cried, but her face looked pale. She took a deep breath, the kind she took before a hard meeting. She picked up her personal tablet and began typing a message to her friend. Her fingers moved quickly. Jay saw the words emergency and corporate obligation, and so sorry. She sent it. The room was very quiet. She took off the pretty dress and changed into corporate travel clothes. The retreat would be cold, she said. She needed to pack a coat. They stood by the door before she left for the transport shuttle. The air between them was thick with a shared frustration. It wasn't anger at each other. It was anger at the walls they had built themselves. "This is the deal," Mira said, not looking at him. "I know," Jay replied. She left. Jay stayed in the quiet residence. He thought about his mother's missed call. He thought about Myra's friend's wedding. They were both losing real things to protect the fake one. The promotion, the money, the fancy apartment. It all started to feel less like a reward and more like a price they were paying, day by day. The pressure was a steady hum in the background of their lives now, like the Citadel's engines. It was always there. They moved through their routines, but the missed calls and the canceled plans sat between them. They didn't talk about it. They were too busy being married. The final dinner with Kthar before the contract signing was set. It was the most important performance. Director Park would be there. Everything had to be perfect. Mira was more focused than Jay had ever seen her. She reviewed their background story points again. She picked their clothes herself. She was the boss preparing for the biggest presentation of her life. The restaurant was the finest on the Citadel. The walls were clear crystal, showing the stars all around them. Felt like floating in space. Kthar and Director Park were already seated. The mood was positive. The contract was all but signed. The dinner was pleasant. The food was beautiful and small. The conversation was easy. Director Park was clearly proud. He talked about the future of the company with the SS Van partnership. Kthar listened, his slow eyes moving between the humans. Then, as the dessert was served, Kthar placed his fork down. The gentle clink was loud in the quiet room. He looked at Mira, then at Jay. His forked tongue tasted the air. "You have shown harmony," Kthar said, his voice a soft rumble. "This is clear. But my people believe the deepest truth is found not in the calm water, but in the storm that does not break the boat. Tell me, what has been your greatest challenge as a bonded pair?" Director Park smiled, expecting a sweet, rehearsed answer. Mira smiled back, her professional mask perfectly in place. She began to speak. "Like any couple, we balance work and life. Learning to—" Jay wasn't listening to her words. He was tired. He was tired of the scripts. He was tired of the gallery openings instead of calls home. He was tired of seeing Mira pack for a retreat instead of a wedding. The polished answer felt like a lie, and tonight, he was too tired to tell it. Mira was mid-sentence when Jay softly spoke. He didn't interrupt loudly. He just let the words out, quiet and plain. "Learning that silence doesn't always mean disagreement," he said. Mira stopped talking. She looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Director Park's smile froze. Kthar tilted his head, interested. Jay continued, looking at his own hands on the table. "Sometimes it's just processing, being quiet together. Not because you're angry, but because you don't need to fill the space. Learning to see the difference, and learning to appreciate the quiet together." He stopped. The room was silent. He had ruined it. He had gone off the script. He waited for Director Park to be angry. He waited for Mira to kick him under the table. Instead, Kthar made a low, deep sound. It was a sound of approval. "Yes," the alien said. "This is truth. The silence between notes is what makes the music. You understand the substance, not just the shape." Director Park let out a breath, his smile returning, bigger now. Wisely said, Jay. Very wise. Mira was still looking at Jay. Her surprise had melted into something else. Something thoughtful. She reached under the table and found his hand. She gave it a squeeze. It wasn't a practiced move. It was real. A thank you. A lifeline. The rest of the dinner was a blur of relief. The contract was secure. Kthar was more pleased than ever. In the transport pod back to their residence, Mira was quiet. When the door to their apartment closed, she didn't take off her coat. She just looked at him. "That answer," she said. "Where did it come from?" Jay shrugged. He was taking off his own jacket. "I don't know. It just felt true. For us, for this arrangement. We don't fight. We just get quiet when it's hard." It was perfect, she said. Her voice was soft. It was the only real thing we've said in front of them all year. And it was the thing that worked. She finally moved, hanging up her coat. The success of the evening hung in the air, but it felt hollow again. The high from Cthulhu's praise was fading, leaving the same empty space as before. Jay, Mira said, not turning around. My mother called today. She and my father are coming to the Citadel next month. She wants to stay with us, to see how married life is treating her daughter. Jay felt a new kind of tiredness. Another performance, a bigger one. And, Mira continued, her back still to him, she asked when we might start thinking about children. Because the clock is ticking, and she wants to be a grandmother. The words sat in the room. They were about a future that didn't exist. A future their lives were creating. Jay didn't have an answer for her. He just said the other thing that was pressing on him. My brother sent a message. My mother's treatment isn't going as well as they hoped. They need to try something new. It's more expensive. Mira turned around. In the dim light of the entryway, they looked at each other. Not as boss and employee, not as fake husband and wife, but as two people trapped in a beautiful, expensive cage they had built together. The professional victory was complete, but in the quiet of their fake home, with the stars shining coldly outside the window, it felt like they had both lost something more important, and they were just now realizing what it was. The air in the residence felt thin and sharp, like before a storm. The success with Cthulhu was a memory. The problems were now. Myra's parents were coming. Jay's mother was sicker. The walls of the act felt like they were closing in. Sumi, Myra's sister, was the spark. She had always been suspicious. Jay saw her once a week for a casual family dinner. She watched them. Her eyes were sharp. She asked questions that sounded friendly but were like little traps. One afternoon, Jay's personal tablet buzzed. It was a message from Sumi. It was not friendly. Sumi, meet me at the Cloud Cafe on level 9. Now, alone. Don't tell my sister. Jay felt a cold trickle of fear. He showed the message to Mira. Her face went pale. Go, she said, her voice tight. See what she wants. Be careful. The Cloud Cafe was bright and full of plants. Sumi sat at a corner table. She did not smile when Jay sat down. You and my sister, Sumi said, not wasting time. You got married 6 months ago, at the Soul Garden Hall. Yes, Jay said, keeping his face calm. I was there, remember? Sumi said. She leaned forward. Funny thing, I was looking at my photos from that day. The garden hall has a very distinctive wall, a mosaic of a phoenix. It's in every picture. But in the wedding photo Mira sent me, the background is blurred. Too blurred. Like someone edited it. Jay's heart beat hard against his ribs. They had used a stock image. They had blurred it to hide details. It was a stupid mistake. I did some checking, Sumi continued, her voice low. The garden hall had a plumbing disaster 8 months ago. It was closed for renovations. For the entire month you claim you were married there. Jay said nothing. There was nothing to say. It's a fake, Sumi stated, her eyes hard. All of it. Why? Is it for the promotion? The money? Does Director Park really care that much about his managers being married? Jay stayed silent. I'll give you 1 week, Sumi said. Tell my sister to come clean with me. The real story. Or I go to Director Park with what I know. This will ruin her. And you. She stood up and left. Jay sat there, feeling sick. He went straight back to the residence. Mira was pacing. He told her everything. The photo, the renovations, the threat. Mira sank onto the sofa. She put her head in her hands. She's always been too clever for her own good, she whispered. The disaster grew. That evening, a different message arrived. This one was on Myra's secure work line. It was from an anonymous account. Contained a short video clip. It showed Mira and Jay from their first week. They were practicing handholds in the living room. The video was grainy, taken from far away, maybe from another building. But it clearly showed them looking awkward, practicing a gesture. then stopping and stepping apart like actors. The message read, "A sweet performance. How much is Director Park's goodwill worth? Let's discuss." A friend at Zenitech Industries. Zenitech was their biggest rival. They had been spying. They had seen the truth. They were trapped from both sides. Sumi from the inside, Zenitech from the outside. "We have to give up," Jay said, his voice hollow. "We tell Director Park the deal is off. We lose the contract. We lose everything. But we stop this." Mira was quiet for a long time. She looked out at the Citadel. "If we give up, Zenitech gets the SS-Van contract. I will be fired. You will be fired. My career is over. The money for your mother stops." She turned to him, her eyes desperate. "There has to be another way." They argued then. It was their first real fight. Not as boss and employee, but as two people who were drowning. "This was a business deal," Jay said, his frustration boiling over. "But the cost is too high. My mother is sick. And I'm here pretending to be someone I'm not. And I'm missing my life." Mira shot back, her own calm finally breaking. "I'm lying to my family. I'm being blackmailed. Do you think I wanted this?" They stood across the room from each other, breathing hard. The weight of the whole year was in the space between them. Then, slowly, Myra's anger faded. It was replaced by a terrible sadness. "We have one chance," she said, her voice quiet and tired. "We can't fight on two fronts. We have to choose one. We go to Sumi. Together. Not with the truth about the contract, but with a different truth." The next evening, they asked Sumi to come to the residence. She arrived, her arms crossed, ready for battle. Mira did not let her speak. "You're right," Mira said. "It's not real. Not the way you think." Sumi's eyes widened. "We're not married," Jay said, standing beside Mira. It felt like jumping off a cliff. "Then what is this?" Sumi demanded, waving her hand around the apartment. Mira took a shaky breath. "It was an arrangement. Convenience. I was lonely. He was lonely. We were both tired. We moved in together. We told everyone we were married because it was easier. Less explaining to our families. Less gossip at work. It was cowardly. And stupid." Jay picked up the story. "But the arrangement, it became something else. It became a partnership. A real one. We rely on each other. Not as husband and wife, but as us. What we built here, even if it started as a lie, it isn't a lie anymore." They were not confessing to the corporate fraud. They were confessing to a personal one. A smaller, more human lie. Sumi looked from her sister's pleading face to Jay's earnest one. The hard anger in her eyes softened. Just a little. She saw their exhaustion. She saw the real fear, not of being caught, but of losing each other. "You're both idiots," Sumi said finally, but her voice was not cruel. "You lied to everyone. You lied to me." "We know," Mira whispered. Sumi was quiet for a long minute. "I won't go to Director Park," she said at last. "Not yet, but you have to tell me everything. The real story, and you have to figure this out. This can't go on." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a truce. One threat was contained. But the message from Zenitech still glowed on Myra's tablet. A ticking bomb in the other room. The storm was not over. They had only closed one window while the wind still screamed at the door. The morning of the signing ceremony arrived. The main hall of Nova Galactica was filled with important people. There were flags. There were cameras. Director Park moved through the crowd, smiling. He shook Jay's hand firmly. "A big day for your family," he said. Jay forced a smile back. Mira was like a statue made of light. She wore a perfect suit. Her hair was perfect. She smiled and greeted clients. But her eyes, when they met Jay's, were full of a silent dread. The blackmail threat from Zenitech was a shadow over everything. They had not answered it. They had decided to hope it was a bluff. It was a terrible gamble. The moment came. Thar stood at the front of the room with Director Park. The digital contract was displayed on a large screen for all to see. All it needed was their biometric signatures. Before we join our futures, Kthar said, his voice filling the hall, I wish to speak with the bonded pair whose harmony first showed me the strength here. Director Park looked surprised but pleased. He gestured for Mira and Jay to come forward. A quiet fell over the room. Jay's mouth was dry. This was it. The exposure. The end. They walked to the front and stood beside Kthar. The alien looked down at them, his large eyes unreadable. He spoke quietly so only they could hear. I have observed many species. Kthar hissed softly. I know performance. I know truth. The first dinner, it was a good performance. But in the quiet between your words, I heard the script. Myra's perfect posture stiffened. Jay felt the room begin to spin. Kthar continued. But performance can become habit. And habit with care can become substance. I watched you. The small things. The shared silence. The weight of a jacket. The taste of fear now in this room. Not for yourselves, but for the partnership you have built. He paused. You began a deception for gain. Yet you built something real to protect it. That is a puzzle. And it is a puzzle my people respect. You went into the storm together, and your boat did not break. That is the reliability I seek. He turned to the stunned Director Park and spoke loudly again for the room. The contract is good. I will sign. A wave of sound, relieved laughter, applause, washed over them. Jay stood frozen. Mira was gripping his hand so hard it hurt. Kthar pressed his scaled hand to the sensor. The contract flashed, confirmed. It was done. The rest of the event was a blur of handshakes and congratulations. They smiled. They nodded. They were ghosts in their own victory. Finally, they escaped. The door of their residence closed behind them, shutting out the noise of the citadel, the noise of their success. The silence inside was huge and heavy. Mira took off her jacket and dropped it on a chair. She walked to the window. The celebration continued in the towers around them, lights flashing. It's over, Jay said. The words hung in the air. The year-long contract between them was complete. The deal was won. The money was theirs. Mira didn't turn around. Yes, she said. Her voice was empty. The performance is over. You can go home. You can call your mother. You can have your life back. Jay looked around the room. He saw the kitchen where he cooked stew. He saw the sofa where they drank tea in silence. He saw the space that had been a set, but had somehow become the most real place he had known in years. He thought of his mother. The money would help her now. He thought of his quiet old apartment. Then he thought of the empty quiet that would be here tomorrow. What happens now? He asked. His voice was quiet. Mira finally turned. She looked tired and sad and beautiful. She was no longer his boss. She was just Mira. She slipped the silver wedding ring off her finger. It made a soft click as she placed it on the table by the window. I don't know, she said. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to him. The contract between us, it's fulfilled. You are free. Jay looked at the ring on the table. It was just a piece of metal now. Aprop. He walked over to the window. He stood beside her, looking out at the city they had fooled. He took a deep breath. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should discuss the terms of a new arrangement. Mira looked at him, her eyes searching his face. What kind of arrangement? One without a script, Jay said. One without an audience. One where we don't pretend to be married. He paused, gathering his courage. But maybe we don't pretend we're nothing either. We could just be Jay and Mira, and see what that is. A long moment passed. The hope in the room was fragile. Like a new leaf. A small, real smile touched Myra's lips. It was tired and it was true. That sounds complicated, she said. And difficult. I know, Jay said. But we're good at difficult things. Together. Mira reached out. She didn't pick up the ring. Instead, she took his hand in hers. Her hand was warm. There was no ring between them now. It was just her skin against his. Okay, she whispered. Let's discuss it. Outside, the citadel glittered, full of noise and light and other people's stories. In the quiet apartment, they stood together, not holding on for a performance, but simply holding on. The future was an unknown space, and for the first time they would walk into it as themselves.